There's your red light. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Dick Merritt, United States Marine Corps retired, doing an interview today with Kurt Bresnitz in Aspen, Colorado at Community Television, Aspen Channel 12, GrassRoots. The date is 5 June 2007. Tomorrow will be 63 years since D-Day, the invasion of Normandy. We'll come to that. Kurt Breznitz was born in Vienna, Austria on the 19th of February in 1918. This is going to be a dual interview in that Mr. Breznitz was a Holocaust survivor in Austria and then later served in the United States Army extensively in World War II in Europe. Kurt, I'd like to just run down a few of the things here. We've known each other for a number of years in the Rotary Club in Aspen.
Right.
And how many years have you been in Aspen?
57 years now. I came in 1950.
1950. Aspen was a lot different then, wasn't it?
It certainly was.
Yes. And you had the Alpine Jewelers.
For 38 years.
38 years. And you did watch repairs.
Well, I did jewelry repairs and watch repairs. I'm a professional watch engineer. I went through 2 different training periods under the GI Bill.
Mm-hmm. Do you still wish you could work with watches, or is that a thing of the past?
I'm fascinating. Every watch is a new challenge.
And you have, well, I know I brought you my dad's watch to work on, and you fixed it. It's interesting that you donate the watch repair money to the thrift shop here in Aspen a little bit.
At this particular time, I want to pay back to the community for all the wonderful things and opportunities that I had here in Aspen. I think this is not only a therapeutic occupation, but also helps the thrift shop because they get quite a few donations from people all over, and most of the watches don't run. They either need batteries or they need major repairs by people that couldn't or wouldn't repair them before me.
What's interesting is that this Roaring Fork Valley Veterans History Project is being co-sponsored by the thrift shop, so the money's coming right on around, and this has been a wonderful experience, and you're the 19th veteran that we have interviewed since February. And just looking at your birth date here, it looks like you're going to be a young 90-year-old here in the February.
That's right. I don't know how I'm so blessed, because nobody in my family reached that age, but I think I have a guardian angel that watches over me. I have survived the Holocaust and World War II, and I am very, very happy because it's a miracle what happened in one lifetime.
You're a living survivor, and you have a real story to tell. If you don't mind, Kurt, I'm going to run down some of the community service things that you have been doing over the years. In addition to our 28 years in Rotary, the Volunteer Fire Department in Aspen, 15 years, a Sister City program with Garmisch, and that will come into play here. You're now on the Senior Advisory Committee for the Senior Citizens, 15 years in the Lions Club, 4 years on the Hall of Fame, on the Board of Adjustment, and 1 year in conflict resolution. And you certainly helped reserve the conflict of World War II in the story that that you have to tell. Kurt, you were born in Vienna and raised in Vienna, and up to 1938, probably had a fairly pleasant life,
Well,
family life.
my family was a, uh, a middle class, well-to-do family in Vienna, and I had a very nice childhood. I have a sister who is 6 years older than I, but passed away already 8 years ago, and I I went to eighth grade uh, regular school. Then I went for 4 years in middle school, and since my father was in the import-export business, he wanted me to take over the business at a later date. But I was more interested in becoming a lawyer, so I changed courses and went to the Real Gymnasium, which teaches Latin, and my Latin teacher was a Nazi sympathizer, and besides, I didn't excel in Latin, and I flunked in Latin, and then went on to commercial school because my dad wanted me to take up the commercial sciences, and after that I went to commercial academy, which is equivalent of a college degree.
Yes.
However, it never came to a college degree. I will point
Things
that out.
changed. Back up a little bit. You and I have a common passion, and that's stamp collecting.
Yes.
You acquired a world-class collection of some 300 volumes, and how did you get started in stamp collecting?
Well, my father, being in the import-export business, as you mentioned, had correspondents all over the world. And rather than giving me an allowance, he gave me stamps. And that's how I got started, and it went from a hobby to a passion, and it fulfilled many of my days working with it, and I always enjoyed coming back to my collection. I exchanged stamps, I bought stamps, I became an expert on stamps, I bought in auctions and exchanged with other students, and before you knew it, I had a collection that is really was unequaled and was auctioned off all over the world.
World-class collection.
Yes.
Well, things were very nice life up until the 11th of March 1938, when what happened then in
Well, the 11th of March really changed my life. I was about 2 months away from graduating. March, April, May. It was actually 3 months away from graduating, because it was in June that I was supposed to graduate, and the political situation there actually started changing in 1938. In early 1938, before the invasion of Austria, Hitler called the president of Austria for a special emergency conference, and he placed an ultimatum to the Austrian president, Mr. Schuschnigg, and he gave him a choice to either turn peacefully over Austria or be invaded. And Schuschnigg came back, and he tried to get a plebiscite from the Austrian people whether they want to stand up and fight or whether they want to surrender. And that was to be on April the 13th. And 13 in this particular case turned out to be an unlucky number, because it never came to the vote, because Hitler's troops marched in on 2 days earlier and Hitler didn't want to take any chances. And I was at that time Boy Scout leader, and the schools closed down for the occasion, and the armored vehicles and the troop carriers and the cannons rolled down the main street of Vienna, and were received with by those that were followers of Hitler with great jubilation. The troops immediately took over, arrested the president. He was on house arrest. They took over the airport, they took over the parliament, they took over the press, and life from there on changed. I was in the, as I mentioned, in the last year of my studies at the academy, and after all the ado and the goose stepping and the propaganda simmered down a little bit, all the Jewish kids in school that still were in school had to be moved to the back row of the classroom, and the professor was welcomed by the brown shirt wearing students with a Heil Hitler, and were completely annihilated. Nobody wanted to associate with the Jewish kids anymore. Mm-hmm. So some of the kids that you or your fellow students that were friends of theirs didn't dare or didn't want to talk to the Jewish kids. Mm-hmm. And shortly thereafter, I was kicked out.
You were kicked out. Do you think that the reason the Boy Scouts were dissolved, they were Lord Baden from England, that Hitler thought that because it was an English source that maybe he would get the youth into the Hitler Youth Corps, the German Youth Corps?
Exactly. Because the Boy Scouts were eliminated, and so were all the other organizations that were not pro-Hitler. Mm-hmm. Many of the leaders were arrested, and the Boy Scouts became the Hitler Youth, and and more holidays were added to the school curriculum, such as April 20th. That was a big affair because it's Hitler's birthday. And the whole nation celebrated, and they had a big parade at the place of the heroes, Heldenplatz in Vienna, a big area where special events were being held, and part of the castle buildings in in Vienna are right close to the city hall.
When the storm, would you call them stormtroopers, or they're goose stepping around in uniform? What happened to the shop owners and the businesses in Vienna?
Well, first of all, the press was taken over. They did not permit any other publication to reach Austria, only after it was censored by the party. Therefore, it was therefore you could not, if you had a shortwave radio and wanted to know what's going on in the world, and you turned in BBC, you had to be very careful in the beginning, because my father always said, talk quietly because the walls have ears. Mm-hmm. And after about 4 months, all the shortwave radios were confiscated and demolished by the party. They also passed many decrees, like for instance, for Jewish people to wear the Jewish star prominently whenever they go out.
You hold that up, Kurt, so we can see it. And I've never seen one of these before. I've seen photographs, and the Jewish star you had to wear in Vienna in 1938.
That is correct. That marked you as a persona non grata. In other words, you were, every time I left home, I was at the mercy of maybe attacked on in the middle of the street. I was spat on, and I just could not react to it, because if I would have taken any action or voiced my opinion about the situation, I would have probably be reported, arrested, and transported to a concentration camp. I lost all my friends that heretofore were friends. They either fled in the early days, or they were Aryans and didn't dare to communicate with Jewish kids of their age.
Could you date Aryan girls?
I had a very wonderful young lady that was my girlfriend, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, mm-hmm. and we both had tears in our eyes, but we understood that we had to part, otherwise they would have thought that associating with Jewish kids, with Jewish people altogether, is not in the public mind, so to speak.
Well, when the Germans came in, did they have their own tents and set up their own camp to control Vienna, or did they do?
No, they patrolled in jeeps or troop carriers, and you never knew. They just blocked your block of a block of the city property, and arbitrarily picked all the Jews that had the Jewish star there. Some of them were released, but most of them ended up in concentration camps.
And did they take over any of the public buildings for their headquarters, take over the control of the city?
Yeah, exactly, arbitrarily. They could enter and were permitted to enter any Jewish home and help themselves to whatever they wanted to. And if they weren't welcomed easily, they just tore the front door down and used force.
You had an uncle who had a jewelry store. What was his fate?
Well, let me first tell you about what was being done about Jewish businesses. Uh, Hitler changed the life of every Jew. They could not possibly pursue their occupation because there was signs put in the front window that says do not buy Jews, and then they had a party member standing in the front door to prohibit people to enter. So therefore, you could not stay in business. They wanted to starve you out and get rid of you. At that particular time, there were no, in the early times, they were more interested that Jews will leave Austria and the extermination camps were only being started in 1943. So there was and whoever had enough money or had relatives anywhere over the world left. But unfortunately, human mind is thusly that you think it only happens to other people and not to you. So therefore, quite a few people that stayed too long regretted it because they could not exist in a Nazi state.
So what was the ultimate fate of your uncle from the jewelry store?
Oh, my uncle was one of the leading jewelers in Vienna. He was in the old town and had reputation and many very good reputation and very many friends. His front window was smashed. His a Nazi administrator was selected to run the business for him, and since the administrator had free choice to help him to anything within the store, he lost a good part of the most valuable jewelry that he had in inventory, and quite a few manufacturers left with him because he had such a good reputation, merchandise on consignment, and of course after Hitler got settled in, all the manufacturers wanted to be paid for the merchandise that they left on consignment, and eventually he could not. He did not have the merchandise to return it, nor did he have the merchandise, the money to pay the manufacturers for the thing, and the pressures got so intense and the future looked so dreary that both my uncle and and his wife had no way out but to commit suicide, and all of my relatives ended up in concentration camps, and I had not the pleasure after the war to see them alive. My immediate family, however, was very lucky, and my sister, father, and mother got out and settled in Cincinnati, Ohio, in 1939.
That would be a year after you left in 1938.
That is correct. Well, I cannot not really tell you the horrible things that took place because it would take too long. I saw Jewish books burning in great celebration. They were piled up and destroyed. I saw Jews rounded up and forced to, in wintertime, it was still frozen, the Danube then, and they cut a hole into the ice and made the old man jump into the frozen water and held them down under the water to the jubilation and shouts of all the surrounding Nazis that thought it was very funny. I saw Jews celebrating in the high holidays in the Jewish synagogue there, and there was a man that poured hot tar on their heads as they left. The inhumanity to man is indescribable, really. They forced people to show their heritage too. It wasn't only directed against the people that practiced the Jewish faith, but they went back 4 generations, and they had to prove that none of their relatives before changed their religion from Jews into Catholics.
4 generations.
Yes, because many Jews would have, if it would have been possible, would have probably given up their religion in order to stay where their roots were. And you mentioned the stamp collection. My stamp collection was always my pride and joy, and I had a very good friend in Slovakia, and I asked him whether I should at night time swim across the Danube and save my collection, or whether he would help me to get the collection in a then neutral land. It was then, it was overrun later on by the Nazis. And he volunteered to do that for me, and one day he came with his motorcycle over the frontier, and he had a spare tire on the motorcycle. We cut the tire open and stuffed my then stamp collection into his tire, and he got it to Slovakia. But unfortunately, when Hitler came to Slovakia, my relatives were arrested and perished in a concentration camp. That friend of mine was the caretaker of the house that they lived in, and he was also arrested for aiding and abetting Jewish people, and I started a new collection when I came to the new country.
Well, I think, Kurt, that you've lived to 90 years old, that there's perhaps a reason that you did survive, that you can tell this story to the Veterans History Project and let the world know of these terrible atrocities. Did you see women or children and women separated from the families broken up, the men sent one way and the children separated out?
You mean in the concentration camp?
Well,
or
when they
from
took them out of Vienna, or later on you saw that?
I knew about it when they definitely, if they were deported and came into the concentration camp, at the time where there were no gas chambers yet, they were separated, and because the men slept in one barracks, wooden slats, no mattresses, no nothing, you know, and under horrible conditions. But yeah, most of they were even separated beforehand when they were put into cattle cars to go to different camps, because you were classified as whether you were to be starved to death or whether you are young enough and strong enough to be in the involuntary labor camp.
Then you had your contemporaries, Austrian young men that had of draft age could be drafted into the German labor corps also.
Well, I was 19 years going on 20, and to my great surprise, I found out a guy from the German army, a German soldier, came and told me that I was to be drafted into the German army. Now, under Hitler's law, no German was permitted to carry a gun. I therefore was not really drafted into the army. I was drafted into forced labor camps to dig trenches for the arrival of the German army, who then could occupy those trenches. And you had no way to defend yourself. In other words, you were destined to become cannon fodder. I definitely knew that the time has come, and my parents knew that too, that in order to survive, I would have to leave the country and leave the family. And I, with tears, said goodbye to my parents in Vienna, and I had to leave under the law with $15 in my pocket. And that was all you could take out of Austria.
Did you have an affidavit from anyone in the United States to get out of Vienna?
My father was fortunate enough, he was fortunate enough to have enough money to pay a Nazi under the table who worked for the army thing to get army release papers for me, and the army release papers were falsified, and my affidavit was being guaranteed and written by my uncle, who lived in Cincinnati and who made it possible for me to enter the United States. But before I could enter, I would have to have some tickets on a steamer to bring me to the United States, and people were waiting for months on end and sleeping on the sidewalks in order to get into the American embassy and see whether they can find people of the same name that would be kind enough to save their lives and make it possible for them to immigrate. I went underground and went to Hamburg to into the lion's den, and I lived undercover for about 6 weeks, and again, due to an archangel above and a miracle, I got a single ticket for overseas travel from the travel agency, but I got it only because the person again committed suicide, and that was making the ticket freed. And most of the people that were waiting for transport tickets wanted to go with their families, and single tickets were harder to get rid of, and I was a happy recipient of one of those tickets. The only problem was Hamburg is, of course, the main shipping harbor of big steamers that came to the United States. And I got a ticket on a ship, a German ship called the Columbus. And I gladly entered the ship, but realized that the ship was a German ship, and if they would have found out that my papers are not all originals, they would have definitely arrested me. So I kept out of sight as much as possible on that trip across the ocean, but when we came to New York Harbor and I saw the Statue of Liberty, I couldn't but cry for the first time in my life, because I was so overrun to have found a new freedom and enter the land of unlimited possibility.
So you made your way to Cincinnati.
So I made my way to Cincinnati. Actually, there were some funny things in New York. My cousin picked me up, and he was working during the day, but he wanted to welcome me to the new land. And he since I only had $15 total money in my pocket, he gave me $25, and he said, "You buy yourself a nice lunch, and you come at the end of the day and you visit with me." And he gave me the address how to get to his home. And and he said, in the meantime, go through Manhattan, and I was overwhelmed. I mean, I went up the Empire State Building, and I went to Macy's, and I had myself a ball. But after a little while, I had a human urge, and I had to go. And so I went to the next hotel, and I went to the concierge, and I asked him,
Nature's calling.
For the closest closet, water closet.
Water closet,
yes,
the toilet.
Of course. But I only said, would you show me the closest closet? So the guy there gave the boy and said, take him up to the 18th floor, room so-and-so. And so I went to the room, and I said, I want to see the closet. And he went to all the closets in the room, opened the door until he found out that I really didn't want to see the closet after all.
Oh.
And then I went. Then the day was ending, and I was to meet my cousin, and I went on the bus, and I told him, I said to the driver, I said, would you please tell me when I have to dismount? And the driver looked at me, and he says, hey buddy, you are not on a horse. so that I had
Oh, yeah.
little
It's just,
difficulties
yeah.
in the first few months before I could Americanize myself.
Takes a
Yes,
while.
yes,
So you proceeded to Cincinnati,
yes.
and you had the uncle there, and was there an Austrian community there that people
Well,
could
there
meet
there
each other?
there were three things. I realized that I got to be employed and make some money, and I asked my uncle whether he would give me a job, because my uncle was in the United States at that time 35 years already. And he started out as a newspaper boy. He became the owner of the newspaper. He, he became the sole distributor for a coffee firm, and he ended up to be the owner of a department store in Denver. His payroll was about 200 people.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I asked him whether he could use one more. And he said, Kurt, he said, I'm a self-made man, and I think it would be best if you look yourself for a job, because I believe in the self-made man, and I couldn't tell you what I don't like of you, or you couldn't tell me what you don't like of me, and I think we should keep business and friendship separate.
Separate.
So I went out, and my first job was in a ladies' garment factory, and my salary was $12 a week
Week.
for 48-hour work. And since it was a ladies' garment factory, there were 4 men in that factory and about 200 girls that worked on the machine. And the boys were in the cutting thing. And before you can cut, they don't cut one garment at a time. They had to spread out cloth on a table, and that was piled up 200 layers high. And then on top came the pattern, and you had a machine, and you followed the pattern and cut 200 items at the same time, either sleeves or blouses, fronts or backs, and then the girl got the parts, and they were sewing them together on the machines, and they were on piecework.
So that was 2 years, January 39 to about May of 41. When
That was my
the war.
income, most of my income, the $12. But at that time, there was also something for newcomers that was called the Gate Club. That was a club where newcomers to the United States could meet in order to Americanize. And I joined that club, and that is where I met Lottie, my wife.
You met Lottie,
And
your wife.
she needed somebody to help her address envelopes for a dance that was forthcoming. And it was love on first sight, and from there on, history took over.
History took over. If you don't mind, Fritz, I'd like to, or Kurt, I'd like to read something here from the congressional record, because Lottie was such an important part of your life. You were married 60 years to Lottie.
That is right.
And
Happily married.
happily married, and she went through your overseas tour and supported you. We'll get to that in a minute, but I'd just like to read this for the record, that Scott McInnes presented this. He was our former congressman from Colorado. On the 19th of November 2004 to the United States House of Representatives, to the congressional record, he entered this in upon the passing of Lottie. And I'd like to read this. Mr. Speaker, I rise to mourn the passing of a kind and caring woman from my district. Lottie Breznitz, a longtime community activist and dedicated nurse, recently passed away at the age of 85 in Aspen, Colorado. She was a kind and generous soul, and it is a privilege to recognize her life in service before this body of Congress in this nation today. Lottie was born in Nuremberg, Germany, and immigrated to the United States in 1938, where she made her home in Cincinnati. She studied to become a registered nurse, and during her studies met and eventually married Kurt Bresnitz. After Kurt was honorably discharged from the U.S. Army, the couple moved to Denver, where Lottie took a job as a head nurse in the emergency room at Rose Memorial Hospital. In 1950, while Lottie and Kurt were on vacation in Aspen, they fell in love with the town and decided to relocate. Lottie worked as the head nurse at the Aspen Hospital, and Kurt opened a jewelry store. After the birth of their two children, John and Carol, Lottie retired to become a full-time mother and continued to volunteer with organizations like the League of Women Voters and the Senior Citizens Council. Mr. Speaker, Lottie Breznitz was an endearing woman whose 5 decades of volunteer work throughout the Aspen community made her one of the most recognizable faces in the area. I'm honored to stand before this body of Congress in this nation today to recognize her outstanding record of service. My thoughts and prayers go out to her friends and family at this difficult time of bereavement.
Now, in addition to this, I want to say that she was a wonderful gal to put up with me for 60 years, and I want to say that together she was always there to help me when I needed her, and we saw the world together. We did a lot of traveling all over.
Thank you, Kurt. By the time the 28th of May came up, the 41, the war was raging in Germany, Europe, and you decided to join the United States Army. And what prompted you to enlist in the U.S. Army?
Well, I felt that I owe it to this country to fight against Nazism. Mm-hmm. So much was taken from me, and so much suffering was going on that I felt that I carried the torch of freedom.
And you certainly did, as we will hear in a later part of this interview. You told me that at that time you carried an alien registration card, and Lottie carried she was born in Nuremberg, so she had a card from...
She was an enemy alien.
Enemy alien.
But we got along very well together.
Love conquers all, Kurt. Love conquers all.
That's right.
You know?
I teased her about that all the time.
Yeah.
You know, you're an enemy alien. Don't tell me.
Anyway, when you enlisted the Army, where did you go to your first boot camp?
My first boot camp was Camp Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Mm-hmm. And we soldiers didn't call it. Oh, I wanted to tell you about the induction. I think it was really funny. I came in civilian clothing, of course, and the first thing they did was to give me a physical. And the doctor said, open your mouth, and if we couldn't see the light of day at the other end, you were in the army, you know, before you knew it. And then I came to the clerk, to the company clerk, and he took all my information down, and he said, born, and I said, yes, and he said, where, and I said, Vienna, Austria, and he put down Vienna, Australia, and I said, you know, this is not right. He said, I'm born in Austria. He said, Austria, Australia, what the hell is the difference?
The Army needed you.
That's right.
The Army needed you.
So anyhow, that was beginning. I was issued. I was given an intelligence test, and I did fairly well with it, in spite of the fact that my English was pretty good, but it was school English. It wasn't it was not Americanized. It was English. And I found that out when I was invited at a party with a friend, and I had to leave early, and instead of saying goodbye, I said, "I'm sorry, but I have to show you a clean pair of heels." That means, that's the English expression of "I have to leave,"
Leaving,
you know?
yeah.
That's right. Yeah, and they all started out laughing. And there were many other things that were comical. English, I had not so much trouble understanding English as I did to listen to the TV and have a black person talk. That was very difficult for me, and I overcame.
Well, here you are now, sworn in the United States Army, carrying a German alienation registration card. How did you get around that?
Well, it says on the registration card that you are not permitted to walk on government property or carry a gun. But I was already in the Army, and I had to go through 3 basic trainings and ended up, before I was even a citizen, in teaching the manual of arms to American soldiers.
You weren't supposed to have arms.
I got my citizenship before I was sent overseas, and I had, before I was sent overseas, on one day 13 teeth filled, so that I would
At one sitting, 13
yes,
teeth?
in one sitting, because they wanted to send me over in perfect shape. Well, anyhow.
Well, was there any other training in other states?
Oh yes, there were several trainings. I went, as I mentioned, I went through 3 trainings. I went through 3 trainings and 2 maneuvers. The second training was when I was inducted in the 1st Infantry 1st Regiment. Our slogan was Semper Primus, always first.
Always first.
And I went with them to, let's see, I went with them to maneuvers in Tennessee.
Tennessee.
Yes. And in Tennessee, we froze our fannies off. It was in late October, and it was very cold, and it was very trying, to say the least. And shortly thereafter, apparently the War Department changed their plans for the battalion, and we were sent to Yuma, Arizona, on desert maneuvers, and there we could fry an egg on the fender of our Jeep. It was so hot.
Well, what did you do there? They kind of spotted you for intelligence, but were you doing intelligence there in Yuma, or?
Oh yeah, I was in front. The intelligence was being scout for the regiment, and being ahead of the regiment, and only in touch by walkie-talkie to report any strange movement on the horizon. And there did I tell you this? I don't know. I did a terrible thing. I thought it would be funny. Oh, the sign of alarm was one shot from the rifle. And
Alarm.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be very funny if I take a piece of ammunition and throw it into the campfire. And they heard that, and the whole telephone started to ring. He said, "Where do they come from? When should we come?"
You're the guy telling them.
And I was horrified about it, and the punishment came shortly thereafter. I was at that time already a corporal, and they busted me down to PFC. But I worked my way up again.
Well, that's something. Then after Yuma maneuvers, did you go to another duty station?
Yeah, I went to Camp Atterbury, and that was, being in headquarters, I had a little influence on being sent to another unit if it was possible. And at that particular time, the government made a decision to equip a battalion of infantry soldiers to re-establish the monarchy in Austria, and this was called the Austrian Battalion, and there were 4 descendants of the Habsburgs in that regiment.
Oh my gosh.
And it was a joy and pleasure for me to see one of them on KP. The others were officers, but this one solo was a PFC.
Was on KP.
Yeah.
So obviously,
I had an ulterior motive to go to the Austrian battalion, however, because the Austrian battalion was stationed in Indianapolis. And Indianapolis is very close to Cincinnati. And since I hadn't seen Lottie for a long time, I thought maybe I could get some leave on weekends and see her.
And did you?
And that worked out fine.
It worked out fine?
But unfortunately, the joy didn't last very long, because the army apparently realized that that was a vain attempt, and they dissolved the Austrian battalion. But this is where I had basic training again, you see?
Oh, I see.
So, because I didn't have enough basic training before. You see, so I was well equipped to face any enemy that might come my way.
Well,
Although the enemy never came my way.
No, but you knew in your own mind that you had language talent, and obviously knew that the Army was going to be committed to Europe in Germany, and perhaps you saw the fact that you could be of benefit. But what happened next is something that you've gone to all these military schools, all this military, and then did you ever go to any civilian thing or German, or what happened there?
It can only happen in the Army.
Only happen in the Army. Well, tell me what happened in the Army next.
Being Austrian, of course, German is my mother tongue. I spoke German fluently because I went, as I mentioned, years of academic education. And wouldn't you believe it? One day I got the order to be transferred to Grinnell. And Grinnell was, I had to go there because I had to learn German, because they destined me to be an interpreter on the Western Front. So I went and would you believe it? I spoke better German than the professor, and he was very peeved at me because he didn't want to be outdone. And that was just shortly before Lottie and Lottie came to visit me while I was there, and shortly thereafter we got married.
Well, you, right. I'm going to read this, Grinnell College. And do you still have any contact with the college?
Yeah, I got about 20 years ago, I got a mug celebrating the 50th anniversary of my graduation.
From Grinnell College
From
Language
Grinnell
School.
College.
Only, and let me read this. I think it's very interesting. This certificate, Army Specialized Training Program. The Army of the United States hereby certifies that George Kurtz Breznitz has completed satisfactorily the course of study in language and area pursued at Grinnell College, Grinnell, Iowa. His training was completed on 4 March 1944. The record of his performance is available on request by appropriate authority for the purpose of determining his academic credit. By order of the Secretary of War, Lieutenant Colonel Davis, Commandant.
Yeah.
So then, what happened 3 days later after the 4th of March?
On the 4th of...
On the 7th of March, or 4th you graduated. What happened 3 days later?
Oh, I got married.
You got married.
Yeah, I had to get out of there and celebrate my graduation.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
see?
And
it was very successful, the marriage. It lasted very long. And I want to tell you something that I have never divulged it to anybody before. But my uncle, believe it or not, gave me as a wedding present a check for $100. And that was a lot of money then. Mm-hmm. And I put it in my hip pocket. Mm-hmm. And as it so happened, I again had to visit a place where only the king is going on foot. And as I let my pants down, the check fell into the into the closet.
In the closet, yeah.
Yeah. And and both Lottie and I stood there fishing out the thing, and you couldn't read the writing anymore. So I had to go back to my uncle and ask him to write another check. Yeah.
Oh, gee. Well, did Lottie give you anything to carry with you before you went overseas?
Yeah, well, she gave me a wedding band with a wedding engraved on it, and she gave me this little bracelet. It's a sterling bracelet that I put on and wore throughout the war years. It's a sterling bracelet.
Is it engraved?
And it's engraved with her name in back.
A couple of other items we'd like to hold up. There is your dog tags, Kurt.
These?
This one right here.
This, yeah.
The dog tag.
This here is my dog tag. It's a little tarnished throughout the years, but I kept it as a little token of memory.
Mm-hmm. And we discussed the other day, I don't think you knew what this notch was for until I told you.
To open a beer can with.
Well, that was one thing. What was the other thing?
I forgot. Oh, yeah, to keep the mouth open in case I get shot and killed, so that they open the mouth and you put it between between your teeth.
Fortunately, that didn't happen. And then here's your marksmanship training: machine gun, pistol, bayonet, and grenade that you received in your training along the way.
This is very important to me because I had to have good eyesight to become a watchmaker.
Oh, later on, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, before you detached to overseas, was there a assignment in San Luis Obispo, California?
This is again one of the mistakes that the War Department did. In my case, the San Luis Obispo was the detach camp. It was beautiful on the California shore, close to the ocean, and the barracks had flower boxes in front,
Oh my goodness.
and it was really a beautiful camp, and they fed you very well because it was the departure camp for service in the Japanese theater.
But you weren't headed that direction, were
I
you?
was not headed into that direction. No, I was then dispatched and transferred to when they found out that they had made a mistake by putting me in the wrong thing.
The wrong
They think
theater.
I probably would be better off to go on the other side of the thing. And I was attached to the European Civil Affairs Regiment, which was part of military government later, and this is the unit that I was embarking on March the 23rd, 1944, and took me to England.
Things were really building up at that point in the war.
Yes, and I was dispatched to Manchester, England, and it was, of course, during the bombardment of England, and so God willed it, I was billeted in a place that was about 10 minutes away from my cousin, who was a dentist there,
for love of
and
God.
I spent quite a bit of time with him and his family, so that was nice.
You didn't
And
have really
then-
a lot of time there because D-Day was the 7th of June of 44.
Well, in the meantime, you see, you can't be in the army without having an assignment. So the logical assignment that they gave me, and that was a very, very useful assignment for the army. They wanted me to teach the high-ranking military officers to talk a few German phrases, because they realized I didn't have too much time to get them all to talk fluent German. So I taught them 3 phrases that they all knew. They were very good.
Only 3 phrases?
Well, there was also grammar and other
Grammar,
things,
yeah.
but one thing, these 3 phrases, they all remembered when they went overseas. One was, wo ist der Bürgermeister? That means, where's the mayor? And the mayor was usually a Nazi and was not in office anymore. Then the second one was, wo ist der Bahnhof? Which means, where's the railroad station? And the railroad station was bombed out. So these 2 first phrases were cancelled out.
Yeah.
They were useless. But the third frame came in very handy. It was, Fräulein, wollen Sie spazieren gehen? That means, young lady, would you like to take a walk with me?
Hell, I
Yeah.
tell you, soldiers are the same all over the world, all over time.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, D-Day was the 6th of June, and actually it'll be 63 years ago tomorrow, D-Day, Omaha Beach. And you were in the Civil Affairs Regiment, and when did you hit Omaha Beach, on what day?
D+10. We followed through the we had the troops. We followed shortly the troops after Omaha Beach, and we lost a lot of people on Omaha Beach. But the beach was D+10. The beach was secured, and I went on a landing craft over a shallow bottom because the sink was very shallow, the beach, and in the excitement of debarking, I went down the scramble nets, and this hurt me very much, but I got stuck with my newly purchased wedding band that I had to buy at retail, which is even
For a jeweler.
worse. For a jeweler, it's,
Oh, no,
it's
no.
terrible. I lost my thing, and I was on the drive to Paris without my wedding band. That can be very dangerous.
That could be very dangerous.
Yes. Anyhow, we landed on Omaha Beach, and the first overrun place was St. Lo. You probably remember that. And it was an eye-opener. You wouldn't believe it. I was in the troop carrier, and as we went, the road was a truck road, and of course, with all that heavy equipment, it was terrible driving on that road. And at the side of the road, there were rifles, and the rifle butt was covered with some earth, and the bayonet was on, and the helmet of a fallen soldier was hanging there, and there was a whole row of these things, and that really was heartbreaking to see. But was worse was that through the terrible bombardment that Normandy had before it was invaded, there were some cows that were blown into the trees, and they were hanging in the trees.
Gosh.
So,
Cows from the tree, hanging from the trees.
yes, you wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
So from there, we followed through and went south.
In France. This is in France.
Yes,
Your Civil Affairs Unit.
Close to the German border as we could, and we waited in a deserted French castle, until our troops would go over Remagen Bridge and invade Germany. And we were in that castle for about a week. And one night, it was already after 9 o'clock, and we were assigned to quarters. The lights went out, and everybody went to wait for the next day, when one of our detachment got very curious and ended up to be the one and only casualty of the war, and he investigated the castle, and I must say that very castle, before we came, was occupied by the German who who went back, retreated, and they left behind one door that turned to be a fatal door. That kid opened the door, and it was a storage door for uniforms of the SS. And he thought it would be very funny if he could find a uniform that fit him. And sure enough, he did. And the lights were off in the dormitory, and he came in, and he wanted to surprise his best friend. And his best friend didn't recognize him and thought it was an enemy SS guy, and he took a pistol and shot him. In order to avert double jeopardy, the army did the first really sensible thing. They had to court-martial him, and they punished him by, the sentence was that he had to pay $1, and he was transferred into another unit. But it was a very tragic event.
Very tragic. And of course, you mentioned that there were cases where German soldiers would strip the dead Americans' uniforms and put them on and then try to infiltrate.
That happened at the Battle of the Bulge.
Battle of the Bulge,
yes,
which we'll get to.
Which
let me just drop back a little bit. Was that Operation Overlord? Was that the name of the?
That is correct, yes.
And I looked up some numbers, and there were over 1 million men involved on both sides. 500,000 Germans, 600,000 Americans, and 55,000 British. Probably the largest battlefield group ever assembled in history.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that didn't involve the British Army, who was on the left of our front.
On your front.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, this Remagen Bridge over the Rhine River was probably the only bridge left, wasn't it? The Germans hadn't blown up.
Exactly. It was for strategic purposes. It was kept intact, but they wanted to blow it up, but we prevented them with laying down some heavy fire on the other end of the bridge.
Some very heavy fighting.
So
it's a very, very famous bridge in
yes, it is.
World War II.
And it was the first step into the mainland of Germany.
Did your classification of your unit change at all? You were civil affairs, then you crossed Remagen Bridge and went into Germany. Did anything change?
Yes, as soon as we came onto German territory, we changed our name from Civil Affairs Company to American Military Government.
Military government.
Yes. And we, from there on, were informed about all the latest developments of the troops in front of us. We were told the bridges that were blown up. We were told about the people that were up for mandatory arrest. We were told about which way to go to our destination, which was Augsburg, where our headquarters finally established. And we were actually welcomed by some of the Germans, because they much rather saw us victorious than the French or the Russians. You see, because they know that especially the Russians, all the women were scared of the Russians because there were so many rapes and illegal accusations that were reported.
At that time, the Russians were pushing toward the west.
That is correct. That
we were
was
pushing
after
to the
Leningrad.
east
That was
and pinching them. And
yeah.
On Overlord, we had General Montgomery from Britain, and of course General Patton,
yes,
United States. Then there was a very famous German general, the Desert Fox, Erwin Rommel, who'd come up from North Africa
Yes,
and
exactly.
assumed a sector up there.
Exactly.
Later, I believe Hitler forced him into a suicide type of a thing. Hitler wasn't happy with his own generals as the frustration, the war went
Well,
along. That
there
was,
were some troops that weren't too happy with Patton either.
uh-huh. Well, anyway, you got to Augsburg in Bavaria, and you're in the military government. And what was your
Now, wait a second. Didn't we go to the Battle of the Bulge before?
we started to talk about it. Let's discuss that. The Battle of the Bulge.
Well, the Battle of the Bulge was probably one of the bloodiest encounters in the history of wars. It was in December 16 that the Battle of the Bulge started. We were rushed because they needed all the help they could, because a major build-up of troops was on the German front in that area of battle, and we came there, and it was bitter cold, and there was heavy action already going on, and I, being not only with military government but also an advanced scout, had a contingency of young men that had to explore the advance of enemy troops, and it was very foggy that morning. I remember that I was given that assignment, and you couldn't see but 10 feet in front of you, and by the time I found out that we were outflanked, I was already more in German territory than in American territory, and the Americans formed an outpost line of resistance, and they questioned everybody that penetrated that line, and there were a lot of American soldiers that were wearing there were a lot of German soldiers that wore American uniforms, that they took off the dead soldiers, and they had also their dog tags, and most of them spoke English, and I was caught in retreat to get back to my unit with the Germans at the same time, and they could not differentiate the foe from the friend.
It was foggy. Did you speak any German? Did that maybe communicate?
No,
in the fog?
I didn't speak German. I was taught. In order to pass that line and get back to my troops, I had to answer some question that only Americans would know.
Native American.
Yeah, Native Americans. They asked me who won the World Series in 1933. And of course, I didn't have the slightest idea. And besides, I had a German accent.
Yeah, German accent.
And so I was thrown into a German prison camp for one night.
With the prisoners,
until
the Germans.
I told him, said, "You make a mistake." He said, "I really am on the American side," but they wouldn't tell until I told them my commanding officer and my unit, and finally they released me the following day. God was with me too at that little encounter. So anyhow, in the Battle of the Bulge, this is a statistic that is unheard of in any uh, uh, combat situation. It was only, what was it, 2 months really, that the Battle of the Bulge took place. And in that short a time, we lost 77,000 casualty, not to speak the wounded ones. 77,000 Americans were killed, and the enemy lost 120,000 soldiers. So the fire was heavy, and the danger was great, and the V2s, the bombardment on England went still on. We were in Tirlemont, Belgium at that time, and the V2s flew overhead, and it was the wrong place to be for anybody at that time.
Buzz bombs, they called those.
Yeah, and the reason why it was so dangerous and the enemy, the Germans, had to be stopped there is because behind our front was Amsterdam, and Amsterdam is the only harbor in the North Sea that is deep enough for big supply boats to enter the harbor and to sustain the troops in front of them. And on the left-hand side were the English, and on the right-hand side were the Americans. But they joined as one unit, and Hitler tried to put a wedge between the two and separate them and have his soldiers move forward towards the coast and secure Amsterdam.
And at that time, the Germans did terrible damage to the dikes in Holland and flooded and did everything they could to keep
them out.
That's keep them
right.
out
Yes.
at that particular time.
That's right.
That was a very, very cold winter, December and January, 44 and 45. And the clothing, they didn't have Sorel boots or any, I would imagine, frostbite.
Well, the problem was that everything was done in such a hurry because they needed the reinforcements to block the advance of the Germans, that we couldn't get the proper clothing for winter time, you see, and that was rough times.
Patton was pushing.
And we were very, very lucky to come out alive, I'll tell you.
Mm-hmm. Well, you got through that. What was next after the Battle of the Bulge?
Well, we finally got to our permanent assignment in Germany to act as military government. We took over the main building of the Reichsbahn. That's the railroad, the railroad organization for Germany. It was one of the bigger buildings in Augsburg, and we established headquarters there. And because we were short on German-speaking personnel, we interrogated some Germans that we thought might have a clean record and not have been part of any of the Nazi head organizations, and I was lucky enough to have a young lady volunteer for the job, and she was great help. And every day we had new important changes in command things. So it was very fluctuating, and my job was to channel, first of all, to take care of a decree that was issued that all the guns and weapons had to be abandoned and turned into military government, and I had to direct soldiers that were wounded and came back from the front and wanted to join their families, and they came back and found that their homes were bombed out and their parents probably killed or had fled to some other places, and they wanted to have travel permits to get to their folks, and anyhow, I made out of a chaos an instead of a chaos, it was an organized chaos.
Organized,
yes.
yeah.
So anyhow, the funniest thing that ever happened in Augsburg, and it did happen sometimes, was an incident where the front was very close by, and front troops, and one day they came and they had one soldier that the two soldiers brought one guy into headquarters, and they had him at his neck and guided them to me, and the guy had a beautiful uniform on with gold buttons.
Oh my God.
And medals,
High-ranking.
and medals on him, and he was absolutely despaired because he tried to explain to me that he's only talking German, and the soldiers didn't understand a word of German, and he wanted to tell them that, and the soldiers said, you know, this must be, we don't know what country this guy comes from, but he seems to be a high-ranking officer from someplace, and you take it from there. And they gave me that guy, and he stammered and was shaking on his whole body, and says, I'm trying to tell these guys for the past half hour that I'm the elevator man at the hotel.
The elevator man at the hotel.
So anyhow, that was a humorous,
that's a
real
humorous
humorous thing. And this very lady that worked with me all week long, all this time, and all the full week, and spoke English very well, and she was great help, and she was a good secretary too, and one day she approached me and she says, Sergeant Breznitz, she said, you know, we would be so honored, my husband and I, if you would, we have a little hut in the mountains that is very, very secure, and why don't you come over weekend and relax a little bit? You're working so hard. So I said I would be honored to do that, and so I went up there, and it was a charming little cottage in the mountains, and away from all civilization. Mm-hmm. And she had prepared on the open hearth a delicious luncheon, and her husband was one of the leading wine dealers in Bavaria, mm-hmm. And I took my shirt off and I relaxed in a stretch chair, and enjoyed the company and the good weather, and all of a sudden along came a jeep and two MPs went on a little joyride.
Oh, yeah.
And they got lost on the road. And they saw me and they said, could you please give us the instructions how to get back to town? And I told them, and one of the soldiers looked down and he saw my uniform pants. No shirt on, but uniform.
Out of
pants.
uniform.
And he says, how in the heck do you get into an American
With a
pair of
German
pants?
accent.
Right. And I told him, said that I work for military government, and I'm stationed in Augsburg. And they said, sorry, but there's a fraternization law in effect, and we'll have to take you in. And they handcuffed me, and they took me down to town under my instructions where to turn. And I asked him for one favor. I said, you know, my commanding officer is very strict. These people have worked with me all week long for months, and they are very valuable to American government. Why don't you release me to my commanding officer to do the necessary disciplinary action that's in place? So they thought that was a good idea, and they took me to headquarters, and we had a commanding officer by the name of Colonel Joublin, who was French, and I don't know how we got a French commanding officer, but there he was, and he was a very, I liked him very much. He was a very just person, and he told the soldiers to uncuff me.
You had handcuffs on.
Handcuffs on, yes, to uncuff me, and he said, "You are dismissed to the soldiers." And he said, "I will take disciplinary action as appropriate." Mm-hmm. And as soon as the MPs had left, he looked at me and he says, "Kurt, what the heck happened to you? Why, you really got into hot water, didn't you?" And I said, I didn't really think that it was a case of fraternization, because she was an American government employee. And if there would have been any fraternization, it would have happened right under your nose.
Yeah.
All I wanted to have, I had weekend leave, and they invited me, and I thought that was perfectly all right. Yeah. So he said that my punishment is to stay 1 week without leave, and at the same time he had two documents, no, one document actually, especially printed to make it possible for military personnel in the line of duty to visit and enter German homes. And
could I read that one, Kurt?
You sure can.
Yeah. This is Military Government Detachment E1H2, dated 10 July 1945. This is to certify that Kurt G. Bresnitz, Tech 4 with a security service number, is a member of Military Government Detachment E1H2 for the detachment commander. Signed by Douglas Williams, Lieutenant, Administrator. On the reverse side of the card that you signed, Kurt, it says, the bearer of this card is authorized to enter all towns, villages, and area within the Regierungsbezirk Schwaben, and to contact civilians in the performance of official duties. He is further authorized to transport civilians in U.S. Army or properly identified civilian vehicles and to drive said vehicles when on official business. Which is, not everyone got this.
I think I was the only one, as a matter of fact, to get it. but it got me out of hot water, and I really was very grateful to get that pass, because I had so much more freedom. And amongst the freedom I had was to go to Dachau. And I went to Dachau. I was there when the gates of Dachau was opened. And of course the entrance to Dachau was a big wrought iron gate that says Arbeit macht Freude. That means heavy work is joyful.
I've been there, I've seen that.
Have you seen that? Yes. And the doors were open already, and everybody, and there everybody that could creep and crawl, and some of them were skeletons, were first of all, they came and kissed us for delivering them. They were so grateful, and the tragic thing is that in those concentration camps were not only prisoners, were not only German descendants, but there were also criminals in there, and mentally, maybe
gypsies.
Gypsies, and yes, and of course, then we went in and we saw those big trenches and the gas chambers, and the trenches were made because they could not dispose of the dead in the gas chambers, so they took the bodies and they used the prisoners to dig the trenches for their own comrades, and then they and the other ones were disposed of before they were collecting the gold fillings out of their partials, and their shoes and their clothing was stripped and beautifully organized in big bins where they were recycled, and after that I went to some of the civilians in that village of Dachau, and I befriended, I knocked at the door of somebody I really didn't know, and she opened the door, and she I asked her whether I could enter, and she was kind enough to let me enter. And there was the living room, and in one corner was the shrine with Mary, the religious shrine, and they were very avowed Christians. And I told them, I asked him, I said, you living in this town, did you know what's going on in there? And they said, we really never knew and didn't question what was in there. We thought that it's just one of the many prisons that we have in any country. And I said, but didn't you smell the smell of the smoke of burnt flesh?
Yeah.
And they said, no, we got so accustomed to it. It was air pollution, and not and they say, what you tell us now, we cannot believe. It is so inhuman and it's so unbelievable that we think maybe that we have listened to a lot of German propaganda. We don't know whether that isn't American propaganda too. And I said, if you feel that way, I said, I want to give you an opportunity to make up your own decision, and we have to clean up that camp. Will you please help us? And they said they will, and they were so shocked when it exceeded any of their slightest imagination that anything so inhuman can take place in a civilized country like Germany.
And your relatives had perished in other concentration camps probably earlier. You never knew
I have
where
no idea
or
where or
anything.
what. No, no.
You know, Kurt, it's interesting that the circle has come all the way around. Hitler, Landsberg is in the immediate vicinity of Dachau, and then Garmisch is just up the hill there.
Yes, of course.
And Hitler was imprisoned in the Landsberg Tower. We stayed there, and that's where he wrote Mein Kampf.
That's right.
And so all this Aryan super race came about, and then the war ended, and we became sister city with Garmisch. You're still involved there. And after Dachau, you got up maybe to Zugspitz and in Garmisch?
Well, I was eventually transferred from Augsburg to Immenstadt,
Immenstadt.
which is a little town in the Bavarian Alps, and it is close to the Zugspitz, who is one of the main ski areas in Germany, and it borders on Austria. It's also close by, you know, and I was through some quaint choice of luck to take a detachment up to Immenstadt to replace some of the soldiers that were there presently. And we came to this little mountain town, and it was a beautiful little town with the typical Bavarian houses with flower boxes on it, and most of them were on the hillside, and they were like little chalets, you know. And the one officer that was detached with us had to find quarters, and we ended up in one of these lovely cottages. There was only one hitch, is that the people asked a favor from us that that we usually did not permit. They asked whether, while we are welcome in the house, they wanted to stay in the basement of the house. They would feel more at home, and they would have some. They had so much bad experience with the French who occupied that part of Germany before, that they would prefer, would we let them live in the basement? And we said yes, and I got my private chauffeur and my private apartment, and it was really...
Living was good. You weren't in the trenches anymore.
Living was good. And this family was investigated whether they had any ties with the Nazi Party, and they showed up clean. And their son was 18 years old, and he was one of the youngest German kids that was released from the German army service. And after interrogating him, I found out that he has one dream. He was delighted to be asked whether he could be interpreter for us, and we needed some more people that could talk German, and he had one desire in his life, and that was to come to the United States. And he was also of great help, and his family turned out to be not only happy to have us, but they invited us. They came out of the basement, and every Sunday they invited us to a little concert that was strictly given for military government personnel. The wife of the owner played the piano. Henry, that was his name, Henry, only I called him Heini. Heini was playing the cello, and his sister played the violin. And every Sunday we had a little concert in the chalet just for us and those that loved music.
That was wonderful. And then let's hold Henry Walpert off when we meet up with him a little later.
Okay.
Okay. And what we'll like to do is Hitler had a place called Eagle's Nest. Did you get up there, his hideaway?
Well,
Eagle's Nest.
Every once in a long time we get leave over weekend, and I got leave, and one of the favorite places was Garmisch-Partenkirchen, because it is such a popular resort and also a very renowned ski area. And while in Garmisch, there is a mountain where Hitler had his home, and where Hitler had his hangout.
His hangout.
His hangout.
Eva Braun.
Yeah.
Braun.
Eva Braun. It was his little escape, and at the time it was shortly after the place was overrun, and we were one of the first ones to be invited to his house, and his house was on the bottom of the mountain, overlooking the whole village. And then you went on a improved road all the way up the mountain to the Eagle's Nest. Well, on the road there were 7 checkpoints, so only people that passed every condition to have a reason to be up at the Eagle's Nest were permitted to pass. And then about 300 feet below the top of the mountains was an elevator that went through the base of that point all the way up into the conference room of the Eagle's Nest. The Eagle's Nest was a building that was built at a level of about 12,000 or 13,000 feet above sea level. And the surrounding mountaintops were absolutely spectacular. You only could see the clouds below and the peaks piercing through the clouds into the thing. You really got a feeling of grandeur. No wonder that Hitler got absolutely nuts.
And the army
he not only wanted to look down on the world, but he wanted to conquer the world too. He wanted to establish a 1,000-year Reich. And that's what he was talking about all the time.
Thank
a
God that,
1,000-year Reich without Jews.
and thank God that didn't happen. And that Eagle's
Exactly.
Nest became a rest and recreation center for U.S.
Exactly,
troops.
and it had kitchen facilities in there and sleeping facilities
The
in
whole,
there, and the building was so built that wherever you looked, there were windows, whether you looked south, north, west, or east.
beautiful.
Yes, it was beautiful.
Beautiful. Well, in closing here, the war ends in May of 45, and then victory in Japan in September 2nd of 45. And in October, you're still in military government getting ready to get discharged. And here's a letter from the military government headquarters, a commendation, Kurt. Tech 4 Kurt Bresnitz, assigned to this detachment, has evidenced a devotion to duty and conscientiousness with merit consideration. His language facility has been of great importance to this unit. Intelligent, resourceful, and orderly, he has performed all of his duties in a superior manner.
Thank you.
And that's what the military government, and we thank you for that. We ended the war, and you sailed back to the States, and you were discharged in 9 November.
Indian Gap.
Indian Gap. And then
There was Lottie waiting for me.
Lottie was waiting
with
for
open
you,
arms.
and you went to New York City,
Yes.
used a GI Bill, and became a watchmaker in New York City.
Do you want me to go into detail on that?
We don't have time. This could be another interview, but
Yes.
Lottie is nursing in the hospital.
Yes.
You're in the GI Bill, and the two of you are forming a new life. And then you decided that you needed maybe more training in the watches, and there was a school in Denver.
Well, it was the
Colorado.
only watch engineering school where you learned how to. Lottie was sick and tired of me going home and being on all her four and me too on the carpet to look for little screws that had jumped out of my tweezers. She said, either get better than the next guy or quit being a watchmaker. And I said, I got to go on. And the only watch engineering school in the United States was in Denver, Colorado. I had a choice to either go to Switzerland and learn it, or to that one school that was in Denver. And I chose to go to school in Denver, and I was fortunate enough to have a very famous watch engineer, Mr. John Hamilton of Hamilton Railroad Watch fame, be my teacher, and I came to Aspen in 1968. I got my master's. 68. I got my master's degree. I was already here, and I adopted 2 children. And Heine came to visit me.
Let's get back to Heine from Immeronstadt, who knocked on your door in 1954.
Exactly. We had already settled in Aspen, and Aspen was good to us, and we built our own home. And one day there was a knock at the door, and there was a family with a child, and I take a second look, and there was Heine. Heine finally made it to the United States. He asked me the first thing when he came in, he said, don't call me Heine anymore, call me Henry. My wife is standing by. and believe it or not, he now lives in Detroit, and he works for Ford Motor Company, and he's vice president of his department. So his wish to come to America and succeed just goes true to the saying that America is the land of unlimited possibilities.
It is. And you and Lottie were meant for each other, and the fact that Lottie could be a nurse, she could relocate to any hospital, and became the head nurse here in Aspen
There are
Hospital.
many things to be said yet, but I
I
think that all good things should come to an end, and this must also.
That's right. Well,
So,
we thank you, Kurt, for being here today. I'd like to present you with an American flag.
oh, thank you.
And thank you very much for
Means an awful lot to me.
being here with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for helping me tell it.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure. It's been fun, too.
Okay.
Thank you.